Good day, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Tim Lee. I'm a research analyst at Red Cloud Securities. I'm delighted to host a Red Cloud webinar on gold mining today. We will hear from Mark Brennan, CEO of Cerrado Gold. During today's webinar, he will provide an overview and outlook. Then we will take questions. You can type your questions into the chat box at any time, and we will get to as many as we can. Before we kick things off, first we need to discuss the fine print. During this Cerrado Gold webinar, forward-looking statements may be made. I would direct listeners to the company's forward-looking statements outlined on page 2 of Cerrado's corporate presentation that can be found on the company's website, cerradogold.com. For Red Cloud Securities, Inc., I would highlight that this webinar is for information purposes only. It should not be considered a solicitation or a recommendation to buy or sell securities. We note that this call does not consider the particular situation or needs of individual investors. Participants should rely on their own investigation and seek their own professional advice before investing. Please see our most recent research located on the Red Cloud website for specific disclosures related to Cerrado. So we have Cerrado presenting today. Cerrado's team has a strong background in the mining industry, particularly in South America. And they're now operating a gold mine in Argentina with a very promising development stage gold project in Brazil. With that, I now turn it over to Mark to update our audience on the company.
Thank you very much, Tim, and thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us on this webinar. It's a real thrill for me to be giving an update on Cerrado. We've had some really significant news over the course of the summer and in the last week, and I'd like to give you a little bit of input on that. As our byline states, our belief and our target is to become a mid-tier producer within the next 3 or 4 years, and that's a pretty aggressive target. But we believe we have 2 very strong projects that are going to get us to that. Basically, we have the Minera Don Nicolas project in Argentina. It's in a very prolific gold belt in Argentina. That basically, when we acquired the mine in March 2020, we were targeting a 50,000 ounce base case production where we produce at around $1,000 all in, which generally would give us about $30 to $35 million of free cash at $1,800. So we're looking at a very significant cash flow generating mine where we also see tremendous opportunity to expand our production and to expand the operations due to the significant size of the property we have. We have a 334,000 hectare property. It's a huge property with very limited exploration over the course of the last 5 or 6 years. So we see this base case production, and then we see significant upside coming from resource expansion and then production through exploration. We started the company in late 2017 with the Monte de Carmo project in Brazil. We know Brazil very well. We've operated in Brazil very successfully on a number of occasions. But we were introduced to a project in Tocantins state, which is a very, very rich and very lucrative environment to be operating in. It's very agricultural driven, soybean, corn, etc. Very significant farming operations, so industrialized farming operations, which means it's a very good operation for us to come and bring a mine into. Infrastructure first class, but and I'll talk to you a little bit about that in a moment. But basically, when we acquired this project, it was brought to us by a couple of geologists who we've known for 30, 35 years, who basically were the geologists who founded and discovered and grew the Belo Sun Volta Grande deposit, which today at 7.4 million ounces is the largest undeveloped gold deposit in Brazil. Unfortunately, not quite in the same promising jurisdiction that we're in. But at the same point, they brought us the project hypothesizing that there was 5 million ounces plus, and we took a look at it. And we think in this district that there is a possibility over time to get to that 5 million ounces. Not only do we have excellent infrastructure, we've got excellent ore characteristics. We published a new resource on a global resource side of about 1.3 million ounces in July. Last week, we published a PEA giving significant returns to investors and significant prolific numbers, where basically we have 125 million capex driving an 8-year project of basically 130,000 ounces a year, generating about 900 million of free cash, or about $130 million of free cash a year. Now, really important, in the first 5 years of production, we would produce 150,000 ounces a year on average, and basically that would generate $150 million at $1,600 gold. At $1,800 gold, that would generate $180 million of free cash based on capex of $125 million. That would also place this project with an all-in sustaining cost of $431 as the cheapest gold producer in the world, based on the records, S&P, IQ, and other information that we've looked at. So it's a very, very material project we're very excited to be developing right now. We have two projects. We're looking for significant production growth from the base case. Due to COVID, our operations in Argentina will probably produce approximately 45,000 ounces this year. Costs a little bit higher. We have about $200 of costs added by COVID testing, as well as COVID costs of having additional personnel and fleet in place. But at the same point, we're looking for significant growth from the 50,000 ounce base case to north of 250,000 ounces by the exit of 2024. That's a significant rise, and these two assets give good possibility for that. We're not looking for value, for production at any cost. It's low cost, as I mentioned. In Brazil, we'll be the lowest cost producer in the world for the first 5 years. With respect to Argentina, we think that $1,000 all in, it will be a good average moving forward. And at $1,800 gold, obviously we throw off a lot of cash flow. We're growing our resources very aggressively. And so, with the two assets we have, we believe we can achieve this mid-tier structure. With the management we have, we're very, very confident in our capability to drive this. As I mentioned to you, the team met about 20 years ago with Desert Sun Mining. Kurt Mencken was at Anglo. He was the actual general manager, Jacobina, for many years when Desert Sun took it out of care and maintenance. And basically, we took that resource from 2 million to 4 million ounces. We brought it back into production. It had been cannibalized. And then we sold it to Yamana in 2006 for just under $700 million. Subsequent to that, Kurt and I left and we started up Largo Resources. Basically, we took that from a hole in the ground. Today, it's now the cheapest, highest grade vanadium deposit in the world, with a market cap of about 1.1 billion. We took that again from inception all the way through the production process. And then the new resource was brought to us by two geos who were at Belo Sun for a short period of time before they decided to move and look at this project. So we've got a first-class team involved. Here's our production profile that we're looking at for the course of the next 3 years. Our resource, in 2018 we had no ounces. Today we're looking at about 2.2 million of global resource. We're looking, and the one thing I will note is that both of these projects are still in their discovery phase. So they're still even though we're looking at a development process, they are still discovery assets. So in Brazil, our intention is to continue to drill aggressively. We've got four rigs on site right now. We're doing a 14,000 meter program. Those 4 rigs, in my view, will probably never leave the site. If anything, we'll probably add to them, but we're targeting 2 million ounces by year end. In terms of new resources, in total resources. So we're still looking very aggressively to grow our resources there. But at the same point, we're also looking at a development plan with respect to the existing resource that we have at the Cerrado lead deposit that we have. And basically what we're targeting there is that we'll have a feasibility starting in the first quarter of next year, and then basically looking to start construction in the first quarter of 2023 to be in production by the end of 2024. So again, in over a little over a year's time, we'll be in a very strong position to be in the development phase here. In Argentina, we're looking at a heap leach opportunity now. We're targeting approximately 20 to 30,000 ounces. We will probably have a press release on that tomorrow to give a little bit more update in terms of what's going on there. But I would expect that we would look at construction starting sometime this year for production, probably moving into early Q2 2022. we're also continuing to explore. There's not been a lot of exploration on this property for a long time, and as a consequence, we think that there's many more ounces to be had here. We're sitting on a global resource of just under 1 million ounces in Argentina, and we expect we're going to grow that significantly. And I'll talk to you about that in a moment. So we have lots of news coming. We've obviously published a lot of news, and we continue to put out news fairly consistently, which I think is for a news company like Cerrado is a good thing. Obviously, the more attention we can bring to the merits of this property and these properties and these assets, the better. Brazil, I'm going to run through this moderately quickly, but we're in Tocantins state. This is, again, an heavy agricultural state. We have excellent topography. We're not in the jungle. We've got great local infrastructure. We've got a 69 kV power line running through our property. We have an estuary from a major river running into our property. We're 2 kilometers from a town of 7,000 people. We're 1 kilometer from a paved road. We're 5 kilometers from the major highway that runs north and south to the capital, where you have a population base of 265,000 people in the capital of Palmas. And then 45 minutes to the west, you've got Porto Nacional with 50,000 people. Most importantly, for any project in Brazil and now anywhere, you have to have local support. When we built Largo, it was largely built on the very strong support that was generated by the local community, particularly the mayor of Maracás, and we're finding that very strong support as well. So not only do we have the fantastic infrastructure, we also have a very high quality mineralization. It's free and liberated ore, high grade for an open pit operation, and yet very easy to process. And that's one of the very positive elements of our economics here. So if you look at the PA that we published about a week ago, basically we had an NPV of 617 million after tax, with an IRR after tax of about 95%. I have never seen numbers this high in my career. It's a total anomaly. But at the same point, I'm very pleased, and I do not believe, this is the second iteration of a PA. This one's a little bit more scaled from the previous one that we'd issued about a year ago, with the increased ounces that we have. But I don't believe that we're going to see significant changes in these numbers working with working on a feasibility study. We've got a good position in the district. We have 58,000 hectares. We're looking at an open pit. Currently, everything we talk about is open pit. We're working on a hub and spoke kind of model where we have a lead deposit, which is Cerrado, and then we have 4 or 5 other analog deposits that will feed the mill. That'll be initially fed by Cerrado. And I'll show you that in a moment. Here's Cerrado. We're focusing on the red area. We have been focusing on the red area, which is the granite area. It's hydrothermally altered and shear granites. Basically, what we find is that the contact zone between the granites and the felsic volcanics, or the quartzite, is where we find the greatest endowment of gold. What we're finding now, what we will be doing now on our program is moving away from Cerrado, even though it's open to the north, to the west, to the south, but looking at some other projects and looking up at these other areas like Ferradura to see if we can expand that hub and spoke model. And I'll talk to you about that in a moment. But basically, when you see in the green the felsic volcanics, in the pink you've got the granites. We have this whole trend, with Fartura, which is an analog. You have this whole trend of the yellows of quartzites. You have this whole trend where basically we're looking to find that endowment of gold where the contact is. And I believe that this trend is probably something in the region of about 6 or 7 kilometers in total. So we have a very significant belt that we can have to penetrate. Now, that said, if you look up at Ferradura, this is a totally different structure, but at the same point, very heavily endowed with mineralization and lots of Garimpero work. If you look at the project, this is our lead deposit, Cerrado. But and this is about 1.5 kilometers by about 400 meters. If you look at all the different white and gray areas, that's Garimpero workings. That's areas that have been mined by the conquistadors in the 1700s. These guys are fantastic geologists to find us the initial resources. And we had the same thing at Jacobina, and that was one of the greatest exploration tools that we had is to go and find where the Garimperos were. They generally go down 10 meters, and then everything below that, we were able to go and exploit. And we find this very similar type of endowment and workings throughout the property, not only at Cerrado. So from that perspective, we believe that in a very prolific gold district, we should be able to add significant ounces as we move forward. The PEA, again, a very, very special PEA. We use $1,600 gold, which I think is conservative. $125 million of capex, of which $25 million is contingency. An 8-year mine life of 130,000 ounces. Again, for me, the most special are the first 5 years, where we produce 150,000 ounces at an average cost of $431. Which would make us, again, the lowest cost producer of gold in the world, which is a pretty remarkable statistic, particularly when we're not producing 10,000 ounces, but 150,000 ounces for 5 years, for at least 5 years. This PA was done by a group called G21, which are ex-coffee engineering people. We worked with them at Desert Sun. We worked with them at Largo. Their numbers still hold today for what they did at Jacobina, and still holds for what they did at Maracas. So we're very confident in the quality of work that they've done. And again, one of the most significant components of the company is that of the resource itself is the high quality ore. There's non-refractory ore. You've got basically you've got the sheared contact zone where you found the endowment with the felsic volcanic and the granites, and basically the ore is coarse grained, it's free and liberated. So when we do separation, we do gravity separation, and we recover 80% of the gold just through gravity separation. And then we add flotation and we get leaching, and basically our recoveries come in to 97, 98%, which means that our operating costs are very low because we don't have a long retention period. We don't have to use a lot of cyanide or any chemicals. And then when you construct the plant, you're using very much an off-the-shelf mill, which means it's not greatly customized, which makes it a lot less expensive. So from that regard, there are just so many variables that have come into play at Monte de Carmo that have been so strong economically. Here's a resource. We use Micon. We use Micon again at Desert Sun. We use Micon at Largo. Very happy with their work. We currently have 1.32 million ounces. We're looking to grow that to north of 2 shortly, and then north of 5 over the medium to longer term. And here, just a cross section. It shows you in pink the granites, the felsic volcanics in the brown. And what we're trying to do is just follow this trend as we go down the full trend of that I showed you earlier. Which, if you look in the picture below pictorially, this area alone will continue down for about somewhere in the region of about 5 kilometers, but it also curves around, and then it comes here to Fartura, which looks like a direct analog to Cerrado, and then it winds its way around. But here's a good photo. Shows you the topography, very benign, very easy to work. This is Cerrado in the foreground. You have the Capitao and then the quartz veins. Rio RTZ in the late 80s, they drilled this area. They drilled the quartz veins. They found 24 quartz veins down to a depth of about 20 meters, and they delineated about 300,000 ounces at 2.5 grams. That's not included in our resource. And our focus has not been on the quartz veins because basically the gold is on the margin, which makes it more expensive. But at the same point, that'll be a healthy resource that we can bring into our model pretty quickly. And as opposed to 23 or 24 veins, we see about 40 veins there that we can add to the resource with. Here's the project base. I don't know if you can see, but there's a line that comes across here. That's a 69 kV power line. About 2 kilometers, 2.5 kilometers to the south, we have the town of Monte de Carmo. Again, very, very supportive of our project and very helpful with everything we've wanted to do. We're currently drilling 14,000 meters, targeted to complete that by the end of the year. And again, our target is to significantly expand the resource to that 2 million ounce level. So in a nutshell, what we have is we have Cerrado as our lead deposit, which currently sits on 1.3 million ounces. And then we have, these 5 other targets that are actually what we believe to be analog deposits. But I'll mention as well, we still see Cerrado potential to the north, to the east, to the south. We found a new target about 400 meters over to the west. That lies between Fartura and Cerrado. We have one to the south. So we're finding lots and lots of different areas, largely initially on the back of what we've seen with Garimperos. Securier is an old Garimpero working of about 140 meters long by 100 meters wide that somebody just kind of stumbled upon about 6 or 7 months ago. So that kind of endowment, running into things like that is because largely there's just a lot of gold there. And our view here, again, just to highlight, we're doing a development program, but this is an exploratory asset with still, I think, the best and the biggest part of its life to come. That's Brazil. Argentina, as I mentioned, we acquired we acquired this on the basis that we would produce 50,000 ounces for 8 to 9 years at a cost of $1,000 all in, generating 30 to 35 million of free cash at $1,800 gold. We're in a fantastic jurisdiction in Argentina. Santa Cruz province is a good place to mine, probably the best place to mine in Argentina. We're in this Deseado Massif. We have neighbors such as Anglo, Newmont, and Yamana. The project has had about $120 million spent on infrastructure. So you've got a brand new fleet, you've got a brand new plant, and basically, lots of exploration potential where there's been very little exploration in the past. We're in Patagonia State. The nice thing here is it's a very, very large province, but at the same point with very little exploration. So unlike if you look at the endowment here, this Deseado Massif is very similar to Nevada in its geological composition. It's a classic epithermal system, and basically you've got this significant belt that has had a disproportionately low amount of exploration compared to what you've seen in Nevada, and we are starting to see a lot more companies coming into Argentina itself, and then also we expect to see a number of companies coming into Deseado Massif, including a major is well known to be coming in. Next to us, here's our property in green. We have Cerro Moro by Yamana producing 250,000 ounces a year. You have Cerro Vanguardia by Anglo. They're producing 225,000 ounces. They've produced 8.5 million ounces out of Cerro Vanguardia to date. Up in the north, you have Cerro Negro, which is Newmont, producing 350,000 ounces. You have Pan American Silver producing in the central region. So there's quite a bit of activity going on, and as we see diminishing resources globally, I think you're going to see a lot more activity coming into Argentina and particularly the Deseado Massif. So as I mentioned, we have this 50,000 ounce scenario of production. We're looking at 2 areas that we're mining right now: open pit, Paloma and Martinetas. The resource grade is 5.25 grams. When we acquired this mine, they were producing at a run rate of 900 tons per day. We're now pushing 1,200 tons per day fairly comfortably. We've brought our recoveries up from 88% to 92%. And what really is the most critical element of what we've done is we've moved our feed grade. When we bought the mine, they were feeding it at less than 2 grams per ton. And right now we're running, as you saw probably in the press release we issued yesterday, at around 3.5 grams per ton. So the combination of increased throughput, increasing the feed grade, increasing the recoveries on those feed grades is a tremendous recipe for success for generating the cash flow that we want. The next step will be the going out and finding new resources. And basically, the short-term opportunities we pretty much got under control. The big thing was obviously improving the mill feed grade. And next, we're looking again at the heap leach. We're looking at near mine exploration, satellite exploration. And if you look on this belt, all these other mines on the belt started as open pit deposits, and they moved underground. And where they found the most significant endowments of gold was down between 300 and 500 meters. We probably have less than a handful of holes that have gone down to south, at a depth of 200 meters. So from that perspective, we see, a whole nother chapter that we can write by moving into the underground operations. As I mentioned, we'll put out a little bit of a release tomorrow just to give an update on the leaching opportunity. We're very optimistic that we'll be able to come out with a program here that can generate some good cash flow for us, augmenting our production, where we're targeting, on top of that 50,000 ounces that we have as a base case. There's lots and lots of exploration opportunity here. I'm not going to go too much into it. But what I will say is that this project has had no exploration since we came into the company for the previous 5-6 years. We're drilling it now very aggressively. We're drilling near mine. We're drilling near the two areas that we're producing at Paloma and Martinetas. And basically, our expectation here is that we should be able to significantly expand our resource just from these areas where there's been historical drilling and in the near mine. We have some very exciting areas that like Michelle and Chispas. Chispas actually sits right next door to the discovery, the Nati discovery at Cerro Moro by Yamana. So our intention is to start doing some work here before the end of the year. And then Michelle sits directly adjacent to Cerro Vanguardia, the Anglo mine. And so we're also going to look at doing some underground, some exploration starting in the next few months. What's interesting in Cerro Vanguardia is you can see the vein structures as we depict them coming through our property. There's a company in Australia called E2 Metals that had a discovery that was 25 meters off our border. And off of the back of that discovery, they've got a market cap of about 50 million Australian. So there's some good value that potentially could be achieved here upon some successive drilling. If you look at some of this results that we have here, very significant intercepts. It's a very well endowed region and gold district. The complication rests that a lot of the gold is at surface, and it tends to be it can be narrow and thin veining and swarms of veins. That's the complexity, but as you get deeper, you can find more meaty veins that tend to be wider and have greater tonnage to them. Here's our resource. Basically, we're using SRK with this, and we're running just shy of about 1 million ounces on a global basis. For the company itself, we've been public now since February 25th, so just under 6 months. We've traded probably about 18 million shares. We've probably made about 6 times the money from the initial investors when they put money up in late 2017. Throughout the process, we've done very, very well in making sure that shareholders have made money and had good returns. Management owns currently approximately 40% of the company. We're very well aligned in our view with existing shareholders. And from that perspective, I think that it means that we're certainly making sure that everything we do is only going to be attributable to enhance shareholder value. And with the management, the division or the spread of the shares is throughout the management team, 25, 26 people, who all have a material component of their wealth tied up to this company. Again, just further enhancing the alignment with shareholders. Our institutions, in the last round, we raised approximately $15 million, and we brought in a number of institutions, good name institutions. We probably have 5 significant institutions, well-known institutions, and then on top of that, we probably have anywhere between 10 and 15 smaller institutions or family offices making up the balance. And so, we're new to the street. We're coming out, telling the story. We're growing. We're showing results. And hopefully, as we grow, we'll start to get bigger and bigger following, which ultimately will lead us, I hope, to a more relevant valuation. The stock has moved well subsequent to the PA release. We're trading around $1.75 now, and so that's very positive. But at the same point, I still think on a comparative basis to our peers, we're still trading significantly below our peers. And I hope as we deliver results and as the market pays more attention, we'll come in at least at par to our competitors. But as I said earlier, we will be the lowest cost producer of gold for the first 5 years based on our PEA. And I think that's got to be worth maybe some form of premium to our peer group. In summary, we've got two great exploration assets that are in their development stage as well. There's a hybrid there. We're growing the production side very aggressively and significantly to generate strong cash flow with good production ounces. We're growing those resources very dramatically. And again, the team have done this before in Brazil 3 times, in Latin America a number more times. So I think we've got all the ingredients in place here to really see a significant benefit to shareholders moving forward. With that, thank you very much for your time. Thank you, Tim.
Great. Thank you very much, Mark, for a very informative presentation. We will now start the Q&A portion of this webinar. A reminder, everyone on the line, that you can type your questions into the chat box at any time. We already have several questions submitted. Maybe I'll start off, I'll kind of break it down by Argentina and Brazil here. Starting off with Argentina. To whom does Cerrado sell their produced gold currently? And do they sell at the paper spot price or a real physical market pricing?
Right now, we're selling it. We actually export a doré, and we ship it to Switzerland, and we ship it to a refinery in Switzerland, based on Argentinian export laws, and we have to reintroduce that capital back to Argentina with 180 days.
And you had addressed this in the presentation, but one question about what's going on with the heap leach. What's the timing look like there?
Well, it's taken us a little longer on the heap leach side, and for that I apologize. 2 things. One is that the priority that we have in Argentina has really been getting the operations up and running, and so we had some issues that we needed to address. And the person responsible for both, driving the operations is also responsible for the heap leach. So there was a little bit of coming off probably in the months of June and July to focus on the operations. So there was a little bit of that, but we've also shifted the focus on the heap leach. Initially it was going to be just based on the northern properties, La Calandrias and Escondido. And now what we want to do is we want to make it where basically we actually have 2 streams. We have a low grade stream, which would have a cutoff grade of say 0.3, and then which would go through the heap leach operation, and then we'd have a high grade stream where basically that would go through the CIL plant. And so we're probably a cutoff as high, 1.6 to 1.8 grams. So we've changed it a little bit of our focus, and so we've had to bring all that in. But you should see again a press release tomorrow, just kind of giving a little bit more color on what's going on there. But in terms of the good news is we've the investigation and the study has taken a little longer than we anticipated, but I don't think that that's going to reflect in the same type of delay in terms of our production scenario. I think we'd like to see production in the second quarter of next year.
Great. One question here, kind of a different angle on it, but how big do you have to grow MDN before a major wants to buy the project? Will you be looking to sell, or can you unlock the value of that huge land package yourself?
That's a great question. I mean, let me just say, there has been interest in MDN, and we are a group of builders, and we are, we like to build things and create things. As you see through Desert Sun, we're happy to sell things at the right price. I think, with discussions that I've had, multiple discussions that we've had, both in Brazil and in Argentina. We've basically said to people, these are brand new properties for us, particularly Argentina. We acquired Argentina in March of 2020, March 15th, and I think COVID hit March 20th. And so we've had very severe conditions in Argentina to operate with COVID. And as a consequence, we haven't really developed our full thoughts on the property as of yet. And so what I'm telling people is, give us till first quarter, second quarter next year, and we'll have a much better idea of what we think the value of this property is. And so that's kind of where I am on Argentina. And I can, with regard to Brazil, we know the property quite well, but I think that we can unlock significant value in the next 6 months. And so I kind of hope that we have the opportunity to continue our exploration unabated, for the next 6 months anyway.
Great. And we did have one question that is a good follow-up here, but looking at the sort of when you expect a positive bottom line on profitability related to the project and in Argentina, I think it does have sort of mine site, profitability, but I would follow up a bit on that, just looking at the financials coming out. You had obviously very good production numbers, but costs have been a bit high in the first half of the year. How much of that is COVID related? How much are you looking at some potential to reduce costs there?
Yeah, great questions. I mean, costs are right now. Costs are our priority. What's really nice is when you get to, first of all, you got to get the production going, and then you have to get, and we've been dealing with severe issues in terms of operating with COVID. But nonetheless, as our budget was to have the first and second quarter being break even, and basically our target was to see a very strong third and fourth quarter to make up on the cash flow. You'll see some news tomorrow on the press release that I think will be very enlightening, in the sense that we actually made an operating profit in the second quarter of $2 million, which was way ahead of schedule. We didn't expect that. And so that was a nice thing. I think in terms of we probably add currently about $200 an ounce due to COVID testing, as well as we have increased manpower and we have increased maintenance and fleet costs. So if we were to get rid of, the day that COVID goes away, our expectation is that we can see a significant drop in the cost. But nonetheless, our hope is that by the end of the year, and our target and our budget is by the end of the year that we will be sub $1,000 all in costs. And that's largely, to a certain extent, that's going to be because we actually increase our production. And as mentioned on numerous calls, we are targeting to exit this year probably on a run rate of about 4,500 ounces per month, excuse me. And at that level, we're highly profitable.
Great. Great. And one kind of interesting, different question here, but will the extra revenue from the gold production go into further development of Monte de Carmo, or would the company look to consider giving back to shareholders at some point?
Well, as a significant shareholder myself, I always look forward to dividends. And listen, I'll get to that in a second more seriously. But I'll say to you, in terms of looking at Monte de Carmo, right now you've got export controls, exchange controls for the export of currency, and this is a problem in Argentina, which they introduced in September of 2019. And basically what that means is you can actually export dollars from the U.S. To the U.S. or U.S. dollars from Argentina, but it's expensive. And so right now we see the ability to grow that asset as a standalone business, as let's call it a bubble, with the heap leach opportunity where we can add significant new ounces. That's where we could spend a little bit of the dollars that we're bringing into the country from the revenue of the gold. So I still see lots of potential opportunity with regard to growing Argentina. where again, to dividend to shareholders probably would not be the most prudent move right now because of those controls. But what I will say to you is that, if you look at our projections on the PEA, basically, year 2, year 3, let's say 1 to 5, and 1 to 5 is not we have very high years, but on average we're generating $150 million a year in Brazil, and I can assure you, we get lots of opportunity to look at opportunities, but we're not going to grow our business for the sake of growing the business. We want high value ounces where we can generate cash. Cash and cash flow are our gods, and so I would be very amenable to when we have production coming out of Brazil, if we're generating 150 million a year, to throw off significant dividends, and I think we'll have the ability to do that. But dividends is very much I think it's it's something not necessarily common in the gold sector. It's becoming more so, but I think that's something we would certainly be amenable to.
Okay, great. One question, kind of returning a bit to the heap leach, but do you have an estimate of what the CapEx numbers would be for that oxide, and how do exchange controls affect that?
Well, exchange controls don't really affect it from the perspective that that it would be internally, it'd be funded by internally generated cash. So that wouldn't have an impact. But in terms of the costs that we're contemplating, probably in that $15 to $20 million mark. I think in terms of we would probably, depending on timing, I think we can fund a lot of that internally. But we may need augmentation, a small augmentation that we can either look to a gold loan or look to a stream. Just as we won't take money out of Argentina, I'm not really prepared to raise equity for Argentina either. So we'll do it in a non-dilutionary kind of manner.
Okay, great. And I guess one question I'd have, though it might be kind of news coming up, but obviously there'd be costs related to the building construction of the pad itself. What else would be involved in adding that heap leach component?
Well, I think the three most significant costs. One is going to be a fleet. 2 is going to be the production facility itself. Now, it will be a modular system, so basically it can be upped and shifted within probably about a month. And then the third thing will be the pads in terms of costs. So basically those 3 items would probably account for 75% of the costs. Great.
All right, then I guess we'll shift to Brazil a bit here. We did have a question related to some of the exploration targets that you're drilling now, and some have visible gold and so on. What can you tell us about those targets? What do you see there that's interesting?
Well, I think first and foremost we have analogs. As I tried to show you, the cross through the cross section. We seem to have unlocked a formula, for lack of a better word, where as long as we stick to that formula, we should be able to hopefully move down through that where you have the contacts of the felsic volcanics and the granites, and that probably, as I said, extends for about 7 kilometers. So that whole 7 kilometers, of course, will not be mineralized, but we're hoping that we can find 1 or 2 Serra Altas or E zone in Serra Alta anyway. Aside from that, so that's Capital, that's Sucuri, that's Fartura, that's Serra Alta. But then I look at Ferradura, and I look at Bit 3, and we drilled Ferradura in January of 2018 when we just acquired the property, because we needed to drill in order to hold the property. And basically we drilled 8 holes, and 4 of them came back with really good, and they were blind. They were very blind holes. And 4 of the holes came back, with good gold showings. And what's interesting at that target is that just like at Serra Alta, that we have there's there's significant showings of Garimpero workings. But to the north, 15 kilometers to the north of where we drilled, which is still on the property, there's probably the biggest Garimpero working on the whole district and the whole property. So listen, if we're successful with the drilling there, and we are sending rigs there now, that could be a 15-kilometer trend with additional gold. So, it's a prolific area. It's now up to the geology gods. It's really up to, I think we have a reasonably good chance of success of expanding our resource, significantly. Now the question is, how quickly can we do that? Because it is exploration,
Absolutely. We did have a question related to permitting in Brazil. What further permissions do you need to bring that into production?
Well, as it relates to the environmental impact, we've already started that. We started in April. Basically, we need 1 year of seasonality for that. So basically, our expectation is that we will. So April to April, we'll file we'll file that study. And then what will happen is that we'll also apply for the localization, or the preliminary, what's called the previous license. And that gives you the ability to actually be there. And then probably in the third to fourth quarter, we'll apply for our construction license. And we'll look to be in construction by the first or second quarter of 2023. So we've done this with Jacobina. When we acquired Jacobina, it was totally cannibalized. It was a shutdown operation. They'd sold all the equipment and whatever. So we started that. That we went through that whole regulatory process. Now that was a little easier because it was an existing mine. When we did Largo at Maracás, Maracás was literally a 10 meter trench when we acquired it. So the reality is we've been through this process before. And Kurt Benken, our president of Brazil and country manager, he's very, very skilled at this type of logistical detail. And so we're highly confident, that the process exists. We know the process. It could take a little longer than we'd like, but based on the schedule that we've provided, we're very comfortable that it'll come in with the schedule that we provided. I'm sure there's going to be points where we're going to be ripping our hair out here along the path, but I think, again, there's a well-established methodology, and I'm sure that we don't see any issues with that. We have no Garimperos, we have no NGOs anywhere near the property, so that helps too.
Great. And then also, you've touched on this, but how do you expect to fund the CapEx of Monte de Carmo?
Well, we have three avenues, and obviously now at the PA level, it's unconventional to raise money at this stage. But so we are looking at a structure now, which is I call it a structured product, where we started with a low degree of confidence in our ability to do this, and we started this in May, and the reality is that as each month grows, we have more optimism. But the structured product basically, I would would result in a 10-year note with probably a 5% coupon with no equity, and so we're moving down that avenue, and if this avenue is successful, I would hope that we'd have success before the end of the year. The other more conventional avenues that we have available to us, and now which generally come at the feasibility kind of stage, would be the streaming and royalties, which probably I'd shrink away a little bit just because we see so much greater ounce potential moving forward, but it's certainly something that we think could be attractive. And then we have the conventional funding, where you get your typical 60-40, 70-30 bank debt to equity. And as with Largo Resources, we raised $300 million. We did that with Bank Itaú. They're the biggest bank in Brazil. We have a very good relationship with them. Actually, Largo was the first company to ever pay back a BNDES loan, business development bank, early. So we're a bit notorious in that sense. So we're well held in regard by Itaú, and I think they like the business. if it makes sense. And we have other alternatives as well on the banking side. But again, remember, this is going to be the lowest cost production in the world. I hope it, as it sits today. So I hope that funding will not be a big issue. And for me as an investor and a significant investor, as the whole team are, we don't want to see dilution. That's our biggest bugaboo right now.
Great. Kind of circling back a little bit to kind of the permitting, that kind of side of things in Brazil. You had addressed that potential of like a dry stack and different things. There's a question that in Brazil, are there any issues with the waste rock?
No, I mean, again, this material, we're so lucky in every possible sense with this mineralization. We have very little arsenic, if any, to speak of, and the reality is that our waste rock is benign. We'll do the dry stacking. We use dry stacking at Maracás. It was very successful for us. We'll do the same here. We see, it'll be a benign tails. So from that perspective, the only environmentally, questionable area will be in the flotation, and that'll be a closed circuit. So from that perspective, we don't see any issues whatsoever.
Great. The two other questions, a bit more on the general corporate side. One is, oh my goodness, we have quite a few questions here, so I'm kind of sorting through a little bit. Any desire to engage in a merger of equals with other development assets in South America?
Well, you know what, I mean, we see lots and lots of opportunities, and we're always looking, right? And so, as you know, in this business, you got to, kiss 100 frogs to find your prince. But what I look at whenever we look at other opportunities is that, what am I giving up in exchange for another asset? And right now with the market cap, I think we have approximately $125 million. I don't, with potential, cash flows next year of $30 to $35 million in Argentina, with basically, hopefully, a funded project in Brazil, that can generate $150 million a year. I don't see a lot of opportunity. I don't think right now, first of all, we don't need other assets to grow to 250,000 plus ounces, which is a nice issue to have. But second of all, there's got to be a strong value proposition. And right now we haven't found it yet to date.
Great. And then finally, kind of a good summary question here to finish off with, but what type of news flow would we expect to hear from Cerrado towards the end of the year and the start of next year?
Well, I think we've been, I think since our go public situation on February 25th, we've had a lot of flow, and basically, culminating, I think, in the most material, which was the PA. But I think we'll continue to see new initiatives. I think you'll continue to see, drill results out of Brazil. Hopefully, you'll see some issues as it relates to funding in Brazil. You'll see, the development stage of Brazil with the moving to the feasibility. So there's quite a bit coming out of Brazil that I think we'll probably have 1 to 2 press releases a month anyway. As it relates to Argentina, we've got a lot there. We've got drill results to report. We've got resources to come in. We've got the heap leach opportunity, amongst other things. So I think one of the issues that we've been a little bit tempered on is that we've in the past perhaps had periods where we put out too much news, and I think that's something that I don't think we're going to be accused of that, but at the same point, there certainly won't be too little.
Great. All right. Well, thank you very much, Mark. Brennan from Cerrado for the presentation today.
Well, thank you, Tim, and thank you all for your engagement. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Great. And just a reminder that Red Cloud Securities will be back this afternoon when our webinar series continues with World Copper at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Thank you all and have a great day.
Thank you, Tim.